All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Tuesday evening. And once again, we're going over the Shemati articles as we do in the morning lesson with Dr. Michael Reitman, Rav. And today we're going to go over Shemati, and They Built Arei Miskenot. Now, as you know, we're doing these in the morning lesson, and these are really important for us to chew over. And in fact, as we go over them, it's given us an opportunity to kind of get more into tune with Baal HaSulam and the Rav as well. So let's carry on and let's give this a good read. Now, it's a bit of a long one, so we'll do our best. And they built Arei Miskenot. The writing says, and they built for Pharaoh Arei Miskenot, Pitom and Ramses. We should ask, Pitom and Ramses means that they are beautiful cities, while the words Arei Miskenot imply poverty and meagerness, and they also imply danger. And we must also understand what Abraham the patriarch asked, and he said, "How will I know that I will inherit it?" What did the Creator reply? It's written, and he said unto Abraham, "Know for certain that your seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. The literal meaning is hard to understand, since the question was that he wanted guarantees on the inheritance, and there's no apparent guarantee in the Creator's answer that your seed will be in exile. But it seems that it was sufficient answer for him. However, we see that when Abraham had an argument with the Creator regarding the people of Sodom, he had a long argument with the Creator, and he kept saying, perhaps. Here, however, when the Creator said that his seed would be in exile, he immediately accepted it as a sufficient answer and did not argue or say, perhaps. Instead, he accepted it as a guarantee for the inheritance of the land. We must understand this answer, and we must also understand that the Zohar interprets what the Zohar interprets about the verse, Pharaoh brought near. It interprets that he drew them towards repentance. Can it be that wicked Pharaoh would want to draw them towards repentance? In order to understand all that, we must understand what our sages said. Rabbi Yehuda says, at the end of days, the Creator brings the evil inclination and slaughters it before the righteous and before the wicked. To the righteous, it seems like a high mountain. To the wicked, it seems as a thread of a hair's breadth. These cry and those cry. The righteous cry and say, how could we conquer such a high mountain? And the wicked cry and say, how could we not conquer this hair's breadth? This verse is perplexing through and through. 1, if the evil inclination has already been slaughtered, how are they still wicked? 2, why the righteous cry? Quite to the contrary, they should have been happy. 3, how can there be two opinions in reality when they have both arrived at the state of truth? This verse speaks of the end of days, which is certainly a state of truth. So how can there be such a difference in reality between a hair's breadth and a high mountain? He explains this with the words of our sages. Rabbi Assi says, in the beginning, the evil inclination seems like a spider web. And in the end, it seems like cart ropes. As was said, woe unto them who draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin as though with a cart rope. There's a great rule we must know. Our work, which was given to us to be based on faith above reason, is not because we're unworthy of a high degree. Hence, this was given to us so as to take it all in a vessel of faith. It appears to us as ignominy and worthlessness, and we are anxious for the time we can rid ourselves of this burden called faith above reason. However, it is a great and very important degree, whose exaltedness is immeasurable. The reason it appears to us as ignominy is because of the will to receive in us. We must discern a rosh, a head, and a body, a guf, in the will to receive. The rosh is called knowing, and the guf, the body, is called receiving. Because of this, we consider anything that is against knowing as low and beastly. Now, we can interpret what Abraham the patriarch asked of the Creator. How will I know that I will inherit it? For how will they be able to accept the burden of faith, since it is against reason? And who can go against reason? Thus, how will they come to be granted the light of faith, since perfection depends on this alone? The Creator answered him about this. Know for certain, etc., that they will be in exile. This means that he prepared a shell, which is the evil inclination, an evil person, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The letters of the word Pharaoh are like the letters of the word Oref, back of the neck. As the Ari wrote in the Shara Kavanot for Pesach, that Pharaoh is considered the Oref, the neck, the back of the neck, the narrow in the sea. He would suck out the abundance that comes to the lower ones with his question, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? By this very question, they're in the hands of the shells. As the Maimonides says, regarding not turning to idol gods, that with this approach alone, meaning with the very question, the prohibition on turning to them is broken. The evil inclination wishes to suck abundance from the holiness. Thus, what does it do to suck abundance from the holiness? The writing tells us, and Pharaoh brought near. The Zohar interprets that he brought them near to repentance. It asked, how can we say that Pharaoh brought them close to repentance if the conduct of the klipot is to turn one away from the Creator? We must understand this by what is written in the Zohar. Transgression is concealed within you, like the serpent that strikes and hides its head inside its body. Also in the Sulam, like etc., since that transgression is concealed, the force of the serpent that strikes the people of the world and brings death to the world is still in all its power and cannot be revoked. It is like a serpent that bites a person and immediately puts its head in its body. And then it is impossible to kill it. There is yet another saying in the Zohar that the serpent bows its head and strikes with its tail. This means that sometimes it lets one take upon himself the burden of faith, which is above reason, which is the bowing of the head, but it strikes with its tail. The tail can be interpreted as the end, that it bowed its head so as to ultimately receive in order to receive. In other words, it first gave one permission to take upon himself faith, so that afterwards it would take everything into its own authority for the shell. For the shell knows that there is no way to receive abundance except through holiness. This is the meaning of Pharaoh, bringing them near. It's explained that he deliberately brought Israel to repentance, so as to afterwards take everything from them into his own authority. This is why the Ari wrote that Pharaoh sucked all the abundance that came down to the lower ones. He sucked from the oref, the back of the neck, and from the throat, which is considered the head of the body, meaning it would take everything in its vessels of reception. This is the meaning of, and they built Arei Miskenot, meaning that this was for Israel. In other words, all their work during the exile was taken into Pharaoh's custody, and Israel remained poor, for Miskenah means poor. We should also interpret Miskenot from the word sakana, danger, meaning that they were in great danger of remaining in that state for the rest of their lives. However, to Pharaoh, the work of Israel was Pitom and Ramses, meaning very beautiful cities. Thus, the meaning of, and they built Arei Miskenot, and Arei Miskenot to Israel and to Pharaoh, Pitom and Ramses. This is because all the work of Israel fell into the klippot, the shells, and they saw no blessing in their work. When they prevailed in their work, in faith and bestowal, they did see fertility. And the moment they fell into knowing and receiving, they fell into the hands of the klippah of Pharaoh. Finally, they came to a determined resolution that the work must be in faith above reason and in bestowal. However, they saw that they were unable to come out of Pharaoh's power by themselves. This is why it's written, the children of Israel sighed from the work, since they feared that they might stay in exile forever. Then their cry came up unto God, and they were rewarded with exiting from the exile in Egypt. It turns out that before they saw the situation that they're in the hands of the klippot, and were hurting and afraid that they would remain there forever, they had no need for the Creator's help from vessels of reception. If they do not feel the shortcoming and detriment caused by them, that this is all that obstructs them from adhering to the Creator. This is because otherwise one has a higher regard for work in the form of knowledge and reception. And faith is considered lowliness. They prefer knowledge and reception, since this is what man's exterior mind necessitates. Hence, they were given the exile to feel that they do not progress in nearing the Creator, and all their work sinks in the klippah of Egypt. Finally, they saw that they had no other choice but to take upon themselves the work of lowliness, which is faith above reason, and yearn for bestowal. Otherwise, they feel that they're in the domain of the Sitra Achra. It turns out that the faith that they took upon themselves was because they saw that otherwise they would have no counsel, and hence agreed to a work of lowliness. This is called conditional work, that they accepted this work so they would not fall into the net of the klippot. This is why they had taken upon themselves this work. However, if the reason is revoked, the love for this work is revoked too. This means that if the evil inclination is cancelled, and there is nothing that brings them thoughts of not turning to idol gods, then the love for the work in lowliness is cancelled. Now we can understand what our sages wrote. In the beginning, the evil inclination seems like a spider web, and in the end, it seems like a cart ropes. We know that there is a discernment of coercive, mistaken, and deliberate. The will to receive that is imprinted in man is considered coercive, since one cannot revoke it. And it is therefore not considered a sin, but an iniquity. As it is written, woe unto them who draw iniquity with cords of vanity. It cannot be rejected or hated, since he does not feel that it will be a sin. However, afterward, it becomes a sin, as it was with cart ropes, and the clipot were then made of this will to receive, which have a complete structure, as in God has made one opposite the other. This is where the evil inclination comes from, meaning everything comes from this hair's breadth. Since it has already been revealed that it is a sin, then everyone knows to guard themselves from this hair's breadth. And they understand that there is no other choice if they want to enter Kedusha, except to resolve to work in lowliness, meaning faith and bestowal. Otherwise, they see that they are under the control of the Klippah of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It follows that the benefit in the exile was the feeling that the will to receive is a sin. And this is the reason to decide that there is no other choice but to try and acquire vessels of bestowal. This is the meaning of the Creator's answer to Abraham, the patriarch, about his request for guarantees for the inheritance of the land. Know for certain that your seed, etc., and they shall afflict them, etc. Through the exile, they would come to discover that the hair's breadth is a sin. And then they would accept the real work in order to detach themselves from the sin. This is the meaning of what Rabbi Yehuda said, that in the future, death shall be swallowed up forever, meaning the Creator will slaughter the evil inclination, and all that will be left of it is but a hair's breadth, which is not even felt as a sin. The hair's breadth is something that cannot be seen with the eye. Yet some wicked and righteous do remain, and they all want to adhere to him. The wicked have not yet corrected their hair's breadth, when the evil inclination still existed, and they could feel that it is a sin. Now, however, when there is no evil inclination, all that is left is but a hair's breadth. So they have no reason to make them turn their vessels of reception into vessels of bestowal, since a hair's breadth is unfelt. But nevertheless, they cannot adhere to him because there is disparity of form, and he and I cannot dwell in the same abode. The correction is to be dust under the feet of the righteous. This means that since the evil inclination has been cancelled, the righteous have no reason to have to go with faith above reason. Hence, since they have no reason, who would make them? They see that the wicked are left with the hair's breadth, and did not correct the hair's breadth while there was evil inclination. And it was the time to correct it, since then the will to receive was evidently a sin, whereas now it does not seem like a sin, but like a hair's breadth. Hence, if there is no reason, there's no place to correct. Yet there is also no place for adhesion, since the disparity of form remains, and all their correction is that the righteous walk on them. This means that they now see that there is no fear from the network of the klipot, since the evil inclination has been slaughtered. Thus, why do they now have to work in faith above reason? Now they see that the wicked cannot reach dvekut, because now they have no reason, meaning an evil inclination that will be distinguished as a sin. Yet they remain outside, for there is still disparity of fault. Hence, when the righteous see this, they understand how good it was for them that they had a reason to work in bestowal. They thought they were engaged in bestowal only because of the evil inclination, but they see that the sin they saw was for their own good. In other words, this is the real work, and it is not because of fear of falling into the hands of the klipot that they do this work. The evidence of this is that they see that the wicked, who did not correct the hair's breadth, now they have no reason to, and they remain outside and cannot come to dvekut with the Creator. It follows that the righteous receive the strength to go from strength to strength through the wicked. The wicked have become dust under the feet of the righteous, and the righteous walk on the discernments that remain as wicked. Hence, in retrospect, specifically, this work is important. And it is not because of coercion, as it seemed to them before while they had the evil inclination. Now they see that even without the evil inclination, it's worthwhile to work in bestowal and faith. Regarding these cry and those cry, it is known that weeping is smallness, infancy. There's a difference between gar and vak. Vak is infancy. Mochinda vak is the mind of the small, illuminate from the past, meaning they take sustenance and light from what they experienced in the past. Mochinda gar, which is the mind of the upper, however, shine in the present by uniting the coupling. This is the meaning of the righteous crying and saying, "How could we conquer such a high mountain?" Now they see what was prior to the slaughtering of the evil inclination, that its dominion was indeed great. As it's written, God has made one opposite the other. And they received great mercy from the Creator, who gave them the power to win the war against the inclination. And now they rejoice in the miracle that they had then, meaning in the past. This is called mochin de katnut, the mind of smallness. The wicked cry because now they have no way to adhere to him, even though now they see that it is only a hair's breadth. But since now there's no evil inclination, they have no reason to turn the vessels of reception to bestowal. They can only see that they're outside. This is why they cry. However, their correction is in becoming dust under the feet of the righteous. In other words, by the righteous seeing that although now there is no evil inclination, the wicked still cannot attain to the good. They say about their thoughts that they had to follow the path of bestowal only because of the evil inclination. They see that this is the real vessel. This means that even if there were no evil inclination, this path is still true. That the path of faith is a wonderful path. Now we understand why wicked remain after the slaughtering of the evil inclination. It is so that they will become dust under the feet of the righteous. If no wicked would remain, there would not be anyone to show this great thing, that the path of faith is not because of conditional love. That is, it is not because of the evil inclination that we should follow the path of faith, but this is unconditional love. Since now there is no longer any evil inclination, and still only through faith can we attain dvekut with the Creator. I heard in another occasion the reason we need faith specifically is the pride within us. But then it is difficult for us to accept faith. This means that although faith is an exalted and wonderful degree, which the lower one cannot attain and understand, its preciousness and sublimity, it is only because of our pride, meaning the will to receive. We imagine it as low and beastly, and for this reason we were given the evil person. And I heard on another occasion, we see that when we do not want to accept faith, we fall from our state. We rise and fall each time until we resolve that we have no other choice but to set faith permanently. This was in order to receive faith. And this is, and they built Arei Miskenot for Israel and Pharaoh. Arei Miskenot means store cities, but also cities of affliction and cities of poverty. Rightio. So it's a long article, as you can see. But what does that really mean for us in the work? Okay. So first of all, what do we have to do in the wisdom of Kabbalah? Right? We're actually always in this state when we're looking for the meaning of life. If we're coming to the wisdom of Kabbalah, we're searching for the meaning of life, right? So we're coming from emptiness. We're in exile. Exile meaning our life doesn't have much meaning. We feel it's empty. And we see this in a lot of people around the world lately, right? A lot of people in the world are miserable. They're sad. The world is pressuring us. We built for ourselves really nice cities, right? In Europe, the US, Asia, all over the world. We have great cities, nice places to live, right? But we feel empty inside. So this is pretty much the same state, really, if you want to take a look at it from the perspective of our lives in the 21st century. This is what they did in Egypt as well. They built beautiful cities. However, inside, they felt emptiness. So this is where we are in the 21st century as well. We built beautiful countries, beautiful cities, beautiful landscapes, all kinds of things we have in the world, right? Beautiful homes, houses, everything that a person can want, he can have actually. And most of us do have. I'm not denying there's no poverty and hunger in the world, no. But at the end of the day, if you look at the 21st century, we've come to a state that we're really developed. We can really give a lot of things to everybody. And in fact, there's enough to go around for everybody, but we're not really doing it. So on the one hand, we've come to a great, development. On the other hand, we're facing a lot of misery. We're suffering internally. And despite the fact that we have everything in life, and if we share it with everyone, everyone can have everything as well, because there's enough to go around. We just don't want to share it. There are a lot of poor people, there's a lot of suffering. So the world is kind of, out of balance. And this is the same thing in corporeal reality, and we can feel the same thing when we're developing spiritually as well. So if we want to take a comparison to the state that humanity is going through and what we're going through, is quite similar, but they're going through it corporeally and we're going through it internally. So the article actually applies to both the physical world and for us as well. So all of humanity is running around building great stuff, great technology, great gadgets, beautiful things, but they're all feeling poor inside. And we're studying spirituality. We're trying to get out of our egos and self-narrow life and vision and kind of open our senses by connecting with other people with good and doing good. And we're working in that direction. So humanity is trying to fulfill their desires to receive, and we're trying to fulfill a desire to bestow. So when we're going in that direction, the direction of bestowal, we're also coming across the truth. And the truth is that inside we're egoists, and this evil inclination that we have, the self-love that we have, is really impossible to get rid of. So we're complaining about it. On the outside world, humanity is, we've got everything, great technology, everything developed and so forth, and they don't understand why they're in a misery, because there's enough abundance for everyone, but half the planet is poor, hungry. The other half has what they want, but they're miserable. So everybody's unhappy. Okay, if you can just draw out that conclusion, nobody's happy. The poor aren't happy, the rich aren't happy, nobody's happy. So in spirituality, inside of us, there's those two states as well. Okay, so if in spirituality we want to go for getting everything and attaining everything, knowing everything, that's the work of the Pharaoh. And that's in order to receive. But if we want to do our spiritual work in order to bestow, in order to be giving, then we have to go above reason, meaning above my own personal interest, above my egoism. So in order for me to go above my egoism, I have to value other people more than I value myself, because egoism means I'm giving myself some exaggerated value. If I give myself an exaggerated value, it means I'm reducing the value of others. So what can that mean? That means that I'm doing everything for my personal benefit without taking others into consideration. If that's the state, which is the state, then this work becomes a burden for a person, because the person doesn't want to leave his personal interests aside. So in spirituality as well, when we're working, we have a situation, we have a state where we're really working and we want to get stuff, know stuff, and that really gives us a lot of energy. And that's Pharaoh really, whipping us, working us, and we enjoy it. Because when a person comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah, they like to know. They fill their vessels of knowing. I know this. I've learned this. So this knowledge gives a person a lot of pleasure. So if they continue in that direction of wanting to know and absorb and to fill their vessels of reception, then unfortunately they can't enter bestowal. They'll just enter this self-satisfied state of knowing what's in books. They become like, academic, right? Someone who knows things that are in books. However, though, if somebody wants to advance in spirituality, which is to come to attain the attribute of bestowal, then for that person, things are a bit more difficult and a bit more complicated. Because on the one hand, the more we try to advance in spirituality, we see and reveal our evil inclination. And the more we reveal our evil inclination, the more we feel frustrated, the more difficult it becomes, and so on. So the path has two sides to it. One's the Pharaoh, who's also wanting to work, but to receive. And then there's the work of Israel. They want to get to bestow. They want to come to this faith above reason, to be above their egoism and to be in bestowal and to reach adhesion with the Creator. However, though, leaving their nature is a tough job. So they keep working. And by working, actually, they're building a lot of new states for themselves. And these are called the cities, right? Pitom and Ramses. So during the work, they built for themselves, a lot of things. So on the one hand, they're beautiful cities for Pharaoh, because Pharaoh understands, knows, and that's a lot of pleasure. But for a person who's trying to advance in spirituality, it's not what he's valuing. His value is different. Going through all these books and knowing and understanding is not what he wanted to attain. He wanted to attain adhesion with the Creator by coming to the attribute, by attaining the attribute of bestowal, so he could reach the purpose of creation. So that's why they call it dangerous cities, because you could get stuck in there all your life and never come out. On the one hand, you think you're studying spirituality. On the other hand, you're stuck in there and there's no way out, and then you just, wither away. So these states that we go through in spirituality, which are, funnily enough, is also what humanity is going through corporeally in the 21st century. So Ingrid is asking, What is there to give or bestow if not future? And one can get sustenance only from the past. What is there to give or bestow if not future? What do you mean if not future? No? Okay, I didn't quite understand the question. And one can get sustenance only from the past. I didn't understand that question, unfortunately, Ingrid. But look, how do we get sustenance, right? We get sustenance from the state that we're in or the state that we aspire to be in. Because these are the two things we can get sustenance from. One is if I already feel sustenance because I attained something, or I have something in mind and I'm working towards that with the intention that, or the thought that I'm going to attain it. So I already feel like I attained it somehow, somewhat of a degree. Why? Because it's in my imagination. It's like opening up a business, right? So when we open up a business, we're excited. Why? Because we're excited about how the future could be good for us. So it's not good yet, but we're excited about the thought that it will be good. Okay, so that's where sustenance comes in. So maybe you can rephrase your question because I haven't quite grasped it. Patricia is asking, how can we discern what we're working for? Well, we can only discern that if I've got friends to work towards, right? If I'm working on my own, then I'm just working on my own. And working on my own is working for myself, right? If I've got friends though, and if I'm doing something for them so that they can advance, then I can say, well, I'm doing something for them, aren't I? So the only way I can discern something, whether I'm stuck in myself or at least trying to do something for others, is the group work. This is why we live in a society. If you think about it too, look, everybody in the world is bestowing to each other, right? You go to the bank, they give you money. You jump in a cab, he takes you to wherever you want to go. I don't know, you go to a restaurant, they feed you. Everybody's bestowing, right? You go to a shop, you buy whatever you want. So it's like the whole world is working in bestowal, actually. However, though, it feels like reception because we're all in the intention to receive, right? So I'm actually giving everybody a service, but while I'm doing it, I'm really sucking their blood, okay? So that's how it works. So the whole system actually is a system of bestowal. Everybody's filling each other, right? So we've got farmers that grow the crops for us. We've got, factories that make the food for us, supermarkets that are selling the food to us. So if you think about all that, the whole world is working in bestowal. But because we're using everything egoistically, it's not turning out to be so great. So that's the whole thing. So I need other people to work towards. And also think about it now. Why is everything turning out to be so bad for humanity? Because now we begin to discover that what we thought was great in life, we've got everything now, cars, planes, we're flying everywhere. We have TVs, phones, everything. And seemingly things are getting better. But what are we discovering? We're discovering that everything we're doing is really not bringing us contentment. We're just not happy. So this is why statistically as well, if you look at the statistics as well, happiness is going down pretty sharply. So how can that be though? Well, especially in developed countries, right? Because if you have everything, you don't feel like you've got anything to aspire to. And the only way to get pleasure is when you have a big yearning for something. You really want something and then you get it, then you feel pleasure. But if you got everything, if you have everything, so it's not a big deal. So there's no joy, there's no happiness around the world, and it's decreasing big time. And people are sick and tired of running after stuff as well. They just don't have the strength to run after stuff. This is what we can see with a lot of people around the world as well, with the homeless as well, right? If you look at them, a lot of people, it's not just because they're mentally sick or drugs or whatever. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of reasons that people are tired. They don't want to run after stuff. They just, they just want to just sit down somewhere and that's it. They don't want to move much. So that's how it is. They don't want to run after stuff. We don't want to get new stuff. And this is the same situation that really what the world is in. This article is really describing what the whole of humanity is actually going through as well. Despite the fact that it's a Kabbalistic article talking about a person in spirituality, we have to also understand that this world works in root and branch formation. So this is also what's happening in corporeal reality. And let's face it, because the whole of reality is perceived inside of us, the way we see corporeal reality is a reflection of our internality. So all of these things that happen around the world is actually showing us what our internal states are. And so anyone who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, you can see clearly that we have an understanding about where we are personally in life as well, and where life is going in general. So the more we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, you can see from the articles, it's so clear that it's talking about the whole of humanity, but only clear for a person studying the wisdom of Kabbalah how reality is working exactly according to spiritual laws. But it's all a matter of consciousness, isn't it? So like the world is actually taking, life is taking the whole of humanity through this, process of development, right? And nobody's feeling that they're going through this process of development. They're just, flowing with it. Nobody really knows. It's like we send the kids to kindergarten, right? Or primary school. It's not really clear to them what they're doing there. All right? We understand they're getting educated, they're growing up, and they have to learn stuff and so on. But for them, it's just, it's not really that clear. So until they grow up, it's not clear at all while they're going to school, but only after they've kind of gone there and understood, we went to school because now we can do these things. Same for humanity. So the difference between a person studying the wisdom of Kabbalah and someone who's not studying the wisdom of Kabbalah and going through all of life's states is this, they lack the understanding, so they don't understand where life is going, so they're angry. They're angry at life, they're angry at other people, they're angry at everything. So you see 99% of the people start screaming about the 1%, That's just how it is. So unfortunately, unless people are ready to grow up and, learn about the meaning of life, why they're here, what they need to do while they're here, what the purpose of life is, and how to go about working about attaining or, getting to the purpose of life. They're just going to keep getting slapped around in life. And that's just how it is. So not much, else we can say really. But this is the same for us as well. And if we're on the path, if we're studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, and if we don't do the proper work, then we get slapped around in life as well. So you get a lot of students in Kabbalah complaining as well. They go, we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, we study, and why are we getting slapped around? Well, it's obviously you're doing something, not quite right, or, you just need to put a bit more effort in there, or, the Creator is showing you something and you're just a bit stubborn and not seeing it. So it's the same kind of process. So a lot of students in the wisdom of Kabbalah get angry as well. They get angry to the Creator, to the Rav, to the group and whatever. But, it's not a solution. It's not going to help. So what really helps us is trying to understand our state, where we're at, and what we need to do in order to get to our next step. Because really, why are we suffering? We're suffering because of the distance with our current state and our next state. So according to the gap between where I am and where I should be, I'm suffering. But if I'm always pushing forward, and if I'm always pushing, doing something, helping here, helping there, somewhere, somehow, then the sufferings that a person goes through start to become internal, like in this article here. So it becomes an internal sensation, internal feeling, where I need to turn, how I need to turn, what I need to do, how I need to do, what I'm incapable of doing, what my true nature is. So it all becomes this internal work. And then corporeality isn't felt that much. So for a student of Kabbalah who's advancing, his corporeality is on the side somewhere. It's like his real work is spirituality, and corporeality is like this hobby on the side kind of thing. And that's how it begins to get felt. Why? Because spirituality becomes more important. So your mind and your feelings and your thoughts are more engaged in spirituality. And because it's more engaged in spirituality, you don't really, even if you're having a hard life, you don't really make a big deal out of it, because you're just not there. Your head's not there. You're somewhere, you're somewhere else. Despite the fact that we all work, we've got family, kids, and so forth, like everybody else, right? So we're not immune to the COVID-19. We don't have money falling from the sky, so we have to go and pay for everything else as well, and just like everybody else. But what happens is, as you study the wisdom of Kabbalah, it's like you're living a double life, and your corporeality is one life, and your heart and soul and mind are another life. And you're more living in that side, spiritual side. So the corporeal things you're not really bothered with too much. And you're not running after a lot of things in corporeality as well. So the problem here is with some students is this. They come to the wisdom of Kabbalah and they stick around, they study and so forth. But what happens is they get miserable and they get stuck in that misery. And then on the other hand, they think they're learning something and so forth, when in fact they're not adding on to their work. And then that's the danger of getting stuck in there forever and ever. So a person who wants to attain anything in life, you've got to add here and there in order to go to the next level. So if a person isn't doing that in the wisdom of Kabbalah, it's a dangerous state as well. They get stuck in there for years. And this is the same in the article as well. So we have to be careful on that as well. That on the one hand, we're learning a lot of things which are very good, and they give a lot of pleasure because we begin to understand life. On the other hand, we need to understand that everything we understand should be converted, transformed into our new state of bestowal. And that's how it should be. Ingrid's asking, how can we plan for the future if there isn't anything to gain? And if no gain, what is there to give? But there is something to gain. How can we plan for the future if there isn't anything to gain? There's a lot to gain. Precisely on our path, there's a lot to gain. At the end of the article, it's saying we're studying in order to get to adhesion with the Creator. And that's everything to gain. That's what's to gain. So the person can come to the purpose of life, which is to reach adhesion with the Creator. We can plan for that. We can plan for that. How can we plan for the future? Well, that is our future. Make no mistake, everybody's going to come to the purpose of life, because if there is a purpose to life, somehow, at some point in time, we're all going to get there. That's for sure. How can we plan for the future? We can plan if I start doing something now And from the understanding I get from what I did now, I can then work for the next step. If I don't do anything, I can't build the next step. The way to go forward is I'm doing stuff, and by doing, I'm imagining to myself through what I've attained at that doing, the next state. So then I'm bringing my next step closer to me. Does that make sense? It's like playing a game, right? Kids play games. Why? By playing the game, they bring the future closer to them. This is how they grow up. Same with us. So we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, and we begin to learn about how our perfected state should be like. Okay? Despite the fact that we're not there yet, what we learn today is going to help us to do the +1 so that we could be the next step. And that's how we can plan ahead. That's the only way to plan ahead. So planning ahead means I'm actually visualizing for myself the future state I want to be. And the only way I can visualize to myself the next state that I want to be is by trying to understand what my current state is. And from this current state, I'm trying to learn what I should be, which is adhesion with the Creator. So from my current state, I'm studying the future state. And in between these two levels, I'm filling in the gaps. That's how we can do it. So we have a lot to gain. And if no gain, what is there to give? Well, once we gain, all right, so like I said, there is a gain. And once we gain, we can give everything because you become like the Creator. And that's the whole idea. It's like kids growing up to be like parents. So the kids don't have much to give us, right? Except they give us joy. They run around, wreck the house, but we're okay with it. Okay. But, you know, over time they grow up and they become like us. And then, you know, that's growing up. So with us, we need to grow up as well. And once we grow up, then we can give things. We need to understand what it means to do good according to the principles of what really good is. And that's called giving. And understanding what good really is can only happen if we understand the good, which is the Creator. Because good from our perspective is always egoistic. It's always good according to what I think. It's always good according to from my perspective. So we have to attain the good from the perspective of the Creator. And then we can give good. This is why everything we do in life turns out nasty. Just turns out for the worst. Nothing good comes out of anything humanity does. Because we're egoistic. How can it? How can anything good happen here if we're egoistic? Nothing can. No, not a chance. Not a chance that any good can possibly happen because we're egoistic. So until we change our nature, this is how it will be. So hopefully, though, we're studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, and every time we study wisdom of Kabbalah, we're attracting the light that reforms, and the Creator is just working on us. Like kids go to school, and they're attracting light there as well. They're doing the same thing. They're learning, they want to grow up, so they're moving forward, and they're attracting the light, they're attracting enlightenment, they're attracting their future, they're attracting their growth. And this is how the whole system works. All right. So don't worry, keep learning, we'll have a lot to give, okay? We'll have a lot to give, and humanity will need all of it too, okay? The way things are going, humanity will need to discover a way to get out of the mess they're in. So we will have a lot to give. So especially we have a lot of work to do in, bringing ourselves to bestowal so that we can actually help everyone. Okay? And this is what Kabbalists have been doing for thousands of years. trying to tell people what the right way to attain the meaning of life is, instead of just living here a few years and then ending up dead for nothing. Right. So that's it. How can we discern? Okay, we've done that. We've answered that question already. Okay. So that's about it for tonight. Another hour we've filled up. So have a good one. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday, God willing. Okay, bye-bye.